The debris field stretched for kilometers in every direction. Broken metal twisted in silent spirals. Shattered hulls caught the distant starlight and made it look like the void itself was bleeding. Minyu adjusted his salvage scanner and watched the screen flicker with useless readings. 3 weeks had passed since the fighting stopped, but the graveyard remained. His ship, was small and old. It groaned when it moved too fast. The coffee maker had stopped working 2 months ago, but it was his and it kept him alive in the black between stars. Salvage work wasn't glamorous. It wasn't safe. But it paid, and Minyu had learned long ago that staying alive mattered more than comfort. The scanner beeped. Minyu leaned forward, squinting at the readout, an escape pod. The signature was weak, almost dead, but it was there. He changed course, guiding his ship through the maze of wreckage. The pod came into view slowly. It was small, built for maybe 4 people at most. The metal was scorched black on one side. Impact damage. Whatever ship it came from had died badly. Minyu brought his ship alongside and extended the docking clamp. The magnetic locks engaged with a dull thud that echoed through the hull. He grabbed his toolkit and helmet, then made his way to the airlock. Standard procedure said he should scan for life signs first. Standard procedure said a lot of things. Minyu had stopped following all the rules years ago. The escape pod's hatch was damaged. He had to use a plasma cutter to get it open. The metal peeled back slowly, and Minyu's helmet light cut through the darkness inside. The pod's emergency lights were dead. Life support showed red across the board. He pulled himself through the opening and swept his light across the interior. Bodies, 3 of them, they were, he realized. Tall, covered in fur that had once been silver but was now matted with dried blood. Their large eyes were closed. The reader on his wrist showed nothing. Minyu had seen death before. It never got easier, but he had learned to keep moving. Then he heard it, a sound so quiet he almost missed it, a whimper. He turned his light toward the back of the pod and froze. A child, curled in the corner behind what must have been its parents. The cub was tiny, smaller than a human child, with pale fur and enormous eyes that reflected his helmet light like twin moons. Those eyes stared at him with pure terror. "Hey," Minyu said softly. His voice crackled through the helmet speaker. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The cub didn't move. It just stared, trembling. Minyu could see the rise and fall of its small chest. Alive. Against all odds, this little one was alive. He should call it in. Protocol demanded it. Alien survivors had to be reported immediately. The company would send a proper rescue team. They had the right equipment, the right training. Minyu was just a salvage operator. He had no business dealing with survivors, especially alien children. But looking at those terrified eyes, Minyu knew what would happen. The rescue team would take hours to arrive, maybe days. The pod's life support was gone. The temperature was already dropping. By the time help came, it would be too late. His comm unit crackled. "Minyu, status report," Sara's voice. His supervisor, a woman who lived by the rules and expected everyone else to do the same. Minyu muted the comm. He reached out slowly, showing his empty hands to the cub. "Come on, little one. You can't stay here. It's too cold. Come with me. I have food, warmth, safety." The cub pressed harder against the wall. Its lips pulled back, showing small, sharp teeth. A warning. Minyu understood. Everything this child knew was dead. Why would it trust him? "My name is Minyu," he said. He kept his voice gentle. "I know you're scared. I know you don't know me. But I promise you I'm not leaving you here. So we can do this easy or we can do this hard. But you're coming with me either way." The cub's ears flattened against its head. For a long moment nothing happened. Then slowly it uncurled. The movement was painful to watch. Every muscle was stiff from cold and fear. Minyu could see now that the cub was injured. A deep cut ran along its left arm, already starting to infect. He moved carefully, letting the cub see every motion. When he got close enough, he removed his outer jacket and wrapped it around the small body. The cub flinched but didn't fight. It was too weak, too exhausted. Minyu lifted the child carefully, cradling it against his chest. It weighed almost nothing. "There we go," he murmured. "I've got you now, you're safe." The return to his ship took only minutes, but it felt like hours. The cub stayed silent, pressed against him, its claws digging into his shirt. Minyu sealed the airlock and pressurized the chamber. When he removed his helmet, the first thing he did was raise the temperature. The cub's eyes followed his every movement as Minyu cleaned and bandaged the wound on its arm. The child's fur was matted with blood and grime. There were bruises beneath the fur, dark patches that spoke of rough impacts and desperate struggles. But the cub stayed quiet, watching him with those enormous eyes. Minyu heated up emergency rations, plain protein paste. It tasted like cardboard, but it was safe for most species. He offered some on a spoon. The cub sniffed it, then turned away. Too afraid, maybe, too traumatized. "You need to eat," Minyu said gently. He ate some himself, showing it was safe. "See, it's not great, but it'll keep you going." The second time he offered, the cub took a tiny bite. Then another. Soon the child was eating properly, with the desperate hunger of someone who hasn't had food in days. Minyu watched and felt something tight in his chest loosen slightly. His comm crackled again. Sora, demanding answers. Minyu looked at the cub, at this small survivor wrapped in his jacket, and made a choice. He reached over and turned off the comm completely. That night Minyu sat in his pilot's chair, staring at the stars beyond the viewport. The cub had curled up on the spare seat, wrapped in thermal blankets. Minyu thought the child was asleep. He was planning his next move, how to get to a station, how to find help, how to explain breaking protocol. Then he heard it, a whisper so soft he barely caught it. The words were in standard but heavily accented, broken, painful. "I have no family." Minyu turned. Those large eyes were open, staring at him, waiting, expecting him to say what others would say, that he was sorry, that it would be okay, that someone else would take care of things. Empty words, meaningless comfort. Instead, Minyu stood and walked over. He knelt down so he was at eye level with the cub. He didn't look away from that heartbroken gaze. "You have me," he said simply. The cub's eyes widened. Its ears lifted slightly. Minyu pulled another blanket around them both and settled into the chair beside the small form. He didn't make promises he couldn't keep. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but right now, in this moment, that was enough. The cub shifted closer, pressing against his side. And for the first time since Minyu had found it, the small body stopped trembling. The first 3 days were the hardest. The cub barely moved, barely ate. Minyu watched those large eyes follow him around the ship, always wary, always waiting for something bad to happen. He couldn't blame the child. Everything the cub had known was gone. Why would trust come easily? Minyu did what he could. He kept the temperature warm. He offered food at regular intervals. He spoke softly, explaining what he was doing as he worked. Just checking the fuel levels, making sure we don't drift into that asteroid field, heating up more of that protein paste. I know it's terrible, but it's what we have. On the 4th day, something changed. Minyu was running diagnostics on the navigation system when he felt a presence behind him. He turned slowly. The cub stood there, wrapped in a blanket that dragged on the floor. Those enormous eyes looked at him with something new. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. "Want to see how this works?" Minyu asked, gesturing to the console. The cub hesitated, then moved closer. Minyu showed the child the star maps, the course calculations, the way ships moved through space. The cub watched everything intently, and Minyu thought he saw a flicker of curiosity replace some of the fear. "I need to call you something," Minyu said that evening. They sat together in the small galley, eating their tasteless rations. "I can't just keep saying, 'Hey you,' forever. Do you have a name?" The cub looked down at its food. When it spoke, the voice was small and broken. Name was, given by family, no family now, no name. Minyu felt that tightness in his chest again. He thought for a moment, then said, "In your language, what's the word for the light you see between stars? That glow in the dark." The cub's ears perked up slightly. "We say." "Then that's your name. Light between stars, because that's what you are, something bright in all this darkness." For the first time, the cub's expression softened. Not quite a smile, but close. The child repeated, testing the sound. Then quietly, "Thank you, Minyu." Hearing his name in that small voice did something to Minyu. He realized then that he wasn't just keeping this child alive until he could hand over to someone else. He was becoming attached, dangerously so. The ship's database had limited information on, but Minyu read everything he could find. He learned that cubs formed something called pack bonds, family connections that went beyond emotion, deep into biology. The database said that cubs who lost their pack could die, not from injuries but from grief itself. Their bodies simply gave up. That information kept Minyu awake at night. He watched sleep and wondered if the child was slipping away despite everything he did. But then he noticed something. The database mentioned specific signs of a healthy bonded cub: steady breathing, regular eating patterns, a certain glow to the bioluminescent markings on their skin. Had all of these. The markings on the child's arms and face, which had been dim and flickering when Minyu first found, now glowed with a soft, steady light. Ate regularly. The nightmares that woke the cub screaming in those first nights became less frequent. Maybe, Minyu thought, pack bonds weren't just about biology. Maybe they were about choice, about showing up every day and being present, about creating safety where there was none before. He started teaching things. How to brew coffee, even though it tasted terrible and hated it. How to play card games with a worn deck Minyu kept in a drawer. How to read the basic ship systems so could help with simple tasks. The child learned fast, absorbing everything with hungry curiosity. One night, Minyu heard a sound he'd never heard before, a low, rumbling vibration. He looked up from his maintenance work to find curled on the co-pilot's chair, the blanket tucked around small shoulders. The sound came from his chest, a purr. Minyu checked the database again. Only purred when they felt completely safe, when they were with their pack in their home, surrounded by love. Minyu looked at his cramped little ship with its broken coffee maker and creaking hull. He looked at this tiny survivor who had lost everything. And he realized that somehow, impossibly, this had become a home. But good things never lasted forever. 2 weeks into their journey, Anchor Station finally came into range. Minyu had to dock there. His supplies were running low. The ship needed repairs he couldn't do in space. And he knew, deep in his gut, that docking meant facing the consequences of his choices. The day before they arrived, asked him a question. What happens when we get to the station? Minyu had been dreading this conversation. He chose his words carefully. There will be people there who can help, medical staff, proper food, maybe even some of your own kind. Smarkings flickered, the purring stopped. Will you leave me there? I don't want to, Minyu said honestly. But I don't know if the choice is mine to make. There are rules about things like this. Laws. Your people have an embassy. They'll want to take care of you. I don't want others said, and there was something fierce in that small voice. They aren't my pack. You are my pack. You found me. You saved me. You gave me a name. That makes you mine. The possessiveness in his tone should have worried Minyu. It was the kind of attachment that could hurt them both when they were inevitably separated. But instead, it made him more determined. He wasn't going to let bureaucracy and regulations tear this child away without a fight. When they docked at Anchor Station, Minyu's supervisor was waiting. Was a big man with hard eyes and a harder expression. He took one look at, standing close to Minyu with those enormous eyes full of anxiety, and his expression darkened. My office, now. His voice left no room for argument. Minyu told to wait in the ship. The child's claws dug into his sleeve. You'll come back. I promise, Minyu said. His office was small and sterile. He sat behind his desk and stared at Minyu for a long moment before speaking. Do you have any idea what you've done? Failure to report alien survivors is a serious violation. Taking custody of an alien minor without authorization is illegal. The company could fire you. They could press charges. I know, Minyu said. Then why? Because it was the right thing to do. Rubbed his face. The Galactic Council has strict protocols for this. Orphaned alien minors must be surrendered to their species embassy. The ambassador is already on her way. She'll take custody of the cub. Minyu corrected, the child's name is. That doesn't change the law. And the law doesn't change what's right. Minyu leaned forward. That child was dying in that pod, not just from cold or hunger, from grief, from being alone. If I'd followed protocol, would be dead right now. Maybe, admitted, but now is alive and there are proper channels for this. The embassy will place the child with a surviving clan, with its own people. That's where the child belongs. Minyu stood. Belongs with someone who won't give up, someone who will fight for someone who already has, and that's me. He walked out before could respond. Back at the ship was exactly where Minyu had left the child, curled on the pilot's chair with wide, worried eyes. When saw him, relief flooded that small face. You came back. I promised, didn't I? Minyu sat down and pulled close. The child's purr started again, soft and hesitant. Listen to me. Things are going to get complicated, but I'm not giving up on you. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Looked up at him with those enormous eyes and nodded. You're my pack. I trust you. And Minyu knew, whatever came next, he would do everything in his power to keep this small life safe. Ambassador Aura arrived 3 days later. Minyu had used that time to prepare. He gathered medical records from the station's doctor who had examined. He collected statements from Sora and others who had witnessed how responded to him versus strangers. He compiled data showing the child's improving health. He was building a case, though he wasn't sure if facts would matter against the weight of law. The meeting took place in one of the station's diplomatic rooms. It was too large, too formal. The walls were gray metal, the lighting harsh and cold. Minyu sat at one side of a long table, pressed against his side. Across from them sat Ambassador Aura. She was tall even for a. Her fur was dark silver, marked with ceremonial scars that spoke of battles and losses. Her eyes were gold and ancient, and when she looked at, something pained crossed her face. When she looked at Minyu, her expression became unreadable. You are the human who found the child, she said. Her standard was perfect with barely any accent. I'm Minyu, yes, I found. Aura repeated the name slowly. That is not a traditional name. It's the name I chose, said quietly. The child's voice was small but steady. Minyu gave it to me. It means light between stars. Something flickered across Aura's face. I see. She folded her hands on the table. I have read the medical reports. I have reviewed your care of the child. You did well, human. You saved a life. My people are grateful. I don't want gratitude, Minyu said. I want to keep with me. That is not possible. Why not is healthy, happy. We've formed a bond. Isn't that what matters? Aura's expression hardened. You do not understand what you are asking. Cubs require specific care, cultural education, connection to our history, our songs, our ways. Without these things, we'll never fully develop. The child will be stunted, incomplete. Seems pretty complete to me. Now perhaps, but in time the lack will show. Aura leaned forward. I do not question your heart, Minyu. I can see you care for the child, but love is not enough. Can you teach the songs of mourning, the dances of bonding? Can you show the child how to navigate pack dynamics, how to find their place in society? Can you help understand what it means to be? The questions hit hard because Minyu knew the answers. No, he couldn't do any of those things. He was human. He knew nothing about culture beyond what he'd read in databases, but he also knew what he'd witnessed. He knew how had been dying and was now thriving. I can teach how to be brave, Minyu said. How to be kind. How to survive when everything seems lost. I can give safety and stability and someone who will never abandon them. Maybe that's not everything, but maybe it's enough. It isn't. Aura's voice was firm but not unkind. There are protocols for situations like this. Surviving clans take in orphaned cubs. We have systems in place. Will be placed with a family who can provide proper care. A family of strangers, Minyu said. People doesn't know. People who didn't save, who weren't there when it mattered. People who are. People who understand what needs in ways you cannot. Had been quiet through this exchange, but now the child spoke up. I don't want to go with them. I want to stay with Minyu. Aura looked at with sad eyes. I know, little one, but wanting is not always the same as needing. Right now you are young, frightened. You cling to the first source of safety you found. That is natural, but it is not a foundation for a life. How do you know? The fierceness in his voice surprised everyone. How do you know what I need? You weren't there, you didn't see what happened. You didn't watch my family die. Minyu did. Minyu found me when I was alone. Minyu gave me food and warmth and a name. Minyu is my pack. You don't get to decide that's wrong. The room fell silent. Aura stared at, and for a long moment no one moved. Then the ambassador sat back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. You have spirit, she said finally. That is good, you will need it. She turned to Minyu. I will give you 1 day to present your case to the council. If you can show evidence that's separating you and would cause genuine harm, they may consider an exception. But understand, such exceptions are rare. The burden of proof is on you. It wasn't much, but it was something. Minyu nodded. 1 day is enough. The meeting ended. As they walked back to the ship was quiet. Minyu could feel the tension in the small body beside him. Hey, he said gently, you okay? What if they take me away? His voice was small again, the fierceness from the meeting gone. What if the council says no? Minyu knelt down so he was at eye level with the child. Then we'll figure something out. I'm not giving up on you, I promise you that. Whatever it takes. The next day, Minyu's friend arrived at the ship. Was someone who studied alien cultures and biology. They had met years ago when needed transportation to a research site. They'd stayed in touch since then, exchanging messages across the vast distances of space. I heard about your situation, said, pulling out I've been doing research. There's precedent for this. For what? For cross-species pack bonding in history. Pulled up files on They aren't as rigid as they want everyone to believe. About 200 years ago, they encountered a species called Some cubs formed bonds with adults after a plague killed many pack members. The bonds held. The cubs grew up healthy and integrated into both cultures. Minyu felt hope stir in his chest, and this will help. It might. The key is proving that has already formed a complete pack bond with you. If we can show that breaking the bond would cause harm, the council will have to consider it. But we need hard evidence. Data, behavioral analysis, everything. They spent hours gathering data. Helped, running scans that measured stress levels, neural activity, and hormone balances. The results were clear. When was with Minyu, all signs indicated a healthy, bonded cub. When they were separated for even short periods, stress markers spiked dramatically. That evening, Aura came to Minyu's ship unannounced. He found her standing in the corridor, looking uncertain. It was strange to see such a powerful figure appearing vulnerable. May I come in? She asked. Minyu stepped aside. Inside was curled on the pilot's chair, wrapped in blankets and sleeping. Aura approached slowly, looking down at the cub. In sleep, its markings glowed soft and steady. One small hand clutched the edge of Minyu's jacket, even in sleep not wanting to let go. Aura stood there for a long time, just watching. Finally, she spoke. I lost cubs in the attack that killed's family, 2 of my own children. The war took so much from us. Minyu didn't know what to say. He stayed silent, letting her speak. When I look at, I see all the children we couldn't save, all the families torn apart, and I think about the rules and protocols we created to protect the survivors. But looking at this, she gestured at the peaceful sleep, at the steady glow of the markings. This is what a healthy, bonded cub looks like. I cannot deny that. Will you help us? Minyu asked quietly. Aura didn't answer directly. The hearing is tomorrow. Present your evidence. I will. Consider what I have seen here. She moved toward the door, then paused. You truly care for the child. That is obvious. But ask yourself, Minyu, are you doing this for sake or for your own? The question stayed with Minyu long after she left. He looked sleeping peacefully, and searched his heart. Was he being selfish? Was he holding on because he needed, not because needed him? Then he remembered finding in that dark pod, terrified and alone. He remembered the whispered words, I have no family. He remembered his own response, the promise he'd made without thinking. You have me. Maybe he was being selfish. Maybe love was always a little bit selfish. But he also knew that was thriving, that the bond between them was real, and that sometimes the right thing to do was fight the system, even when the odds seemed impossible. Tomorrow he would present his case. Tomorrow he would fight. And whatever happened, he would know he'd done everything he could for this small life that had changed his own. The hearing was scheduled for noon station time. Minyu woke early, his stomach tight with nerves. He found already awake, sitting by the viewport and staring at the stars beyond. The child's markings were dim, flickering with anxiety. Can't sleep? Minyu asked. Shook their head. What if they say no? What if they take me away? Then we'll deal with it. Minyu sat beside the child. But we're not beaten yet. We have evidence. We have friends helping us. We have a chance. Is a chance enough? Minyu had no answer for that. He just pulled close and held on, hoping it would be. They were preparing to leave for the hearing when the station's alarms began to wail. Red lights flashed through the corridors. An automated voice echoed through the speakers, cold and mechanical. Unknown vessel approaching. All personnel to defensive stations. This is not a drill. Minyu's blood went cold. He pulled up the station's sensor feed on his. A ship was approaching fast, large, military grade. The design was unmistakable. They were the ones who had attacked Colony. Brutal, efficient, and merciless. What were they doing here? His voice came through Minyu's comm unit. All civilian ships remain docked. Station security is handling this. Stay where you are. But Minyu couldn't just sit still. He accessed the station's communication channels, listening to the chatter between security and the approaching ship. What he heard made his heart sink. We are here for the cub, a harsh voice said. Commander, according to the identification tags. Turn over the child or we will take it by force. Captain, the station's security chief, responded firmly. This is a neutral station under Galactic Council protection. You have no authority here. Leave immediately. The cub possesses information vital to our military operations. The child's parent was a clan leader with knowledge of hidden outposts. We believe this information may be stored in the cub's memory, either consciously or genetically. We will retrieve it. The child is under council protection. If you attempt to board this station, you will be fired upon. There was a pause, then spoke again, and his voice was cold. You have 1 hour to comply. After that, we breach your station. Many will die. Is one alien cub worth all those lives? The comm channel went dead. Minyu looked at who had gone very still. The child's face showed understanding beyond their years. They want me. They're not getting you. Minyu's voice was hard. But what could he do? The station's defenses were designed to handle pirates and small threats, not military warships. If they attacked, people would die, lots of people, and they would take anyway. The logic was brutal and clear. Appeared at the ship's entrance, his face grim. There's a way out, the old maintenance tunnels. They were decommissioned years ago, but they're still functional. We can get you and the kid off the station before the breach." "And then what?" Minyu asked. "They'll just follow, or they'll blow up the station anyway because we ran." "Maybe, but at least you'll have a chance." Minyu looked at. The child's expression was strange, not afraid exactly, more determined, like something had crystallized inside that young mind. "No," said quietly, "we don't run." Minyu started. "My family didn't run when they came. They stayed, they fought, they died." His voice was steady, though tears welled in those enormous eyes. "I'm alive because they gave me time to reach the escape pod, because they sacrificed themselves. If I run now, if I let others die to protect me, what does that make me?" "It makes you smart," said. "It makes you a survivor." "It makes me a coward," looked up at Minyu. "You taught me to be brave. You showed me that sometimes you have to fight even when you're scared. You stood up to Ambassador Aura for me. You broke the rules. You risked everything. I watched you. I learned from you. Now I need to do the same." Minyu felt pride and terror war inside him. When had this frightened cub become so brave? But he also knew was right. Running would save them, but it would doom the station, and would carry that guilt forever. "Then we don't run," Minyu said. "We fight, but we fight smart." An idea was forming in his mind. Risky, possibly stupid, but maybe, just maybe, it could work. He explained it quickly to and looked skeptical. His markings began to glow brighter. "That's insane," said. "You have a better plan." Thought for a moment, then shook his head. "I'll talk to Captain, get her to buy you time, but if this goes wrong—" "It won't." Minyu hoped he sounded more confident than he felt. 30 minutes later, Minyu and stood in the station's main communications center. Had helped them set up a system to broadcast on all frequencies, public and military. Stood nearby, looking worried. Sora had shown up too, along with a dozen other people Minyu had worked with over the years. People who barely knew him but understood what was at stake. "Ready?" asked. Nodded. Minyu squeezed the child's hand, then activated the transmission. Cameras focused on them. Their images would now be broadcasting across the station, to the ship, and to any vessel within range. Maybe even back to Council space. "My name is Minyu," he began. "I'm a human, a salvage operator. 3 weeks ago I found this child in a destroyed escape pod. His family died in an attack by forces. An unprovoked attack on a civilian colony, a war crime." He took a breath, then continued. "Now they are here. They want to take, they claim has military information. But that's a lie, is a child, a survivor, and I'm not letting anyone take this child away." Stepped forward, small but standing tall. I'm the child of clan leader Myra. They killed my mother, my father, my siblings. They destroyed my home. I saw it all." The child's voice shook but didn't break. "I don't have secret information. I'm just a cub who wants to live. But if they take me, they will hurt me to find things that don't exist. And they will keep doing this to others. Someone has to stand up. Someone has to say no." Minyu took over again. "We're broadcasting this everywhere. The Galactic Council will see it. Every news network, every ship. They can't hide what they've done anymore. They can't pretend this is legitimate. The whole galaxy is watching now." It was a gamble. Everything depended on public pressure, on the council caring enough to act, on shame and exposure mattering to the... If it didn't work, they had just painted an even bigger target on themselves. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Captain's voice came through the comm. "Vessel is, their holding position, no sign of weapons charging." More silence. Agonizing seconds stretched into minutes. Then a new voice joined the channel, familiar and commanding. "This is Ambassador Aura of the Embassy. The fleet has been of this situation and is en route. Estimated arrival time 40 minutes. Commander, if you harm that cub or breach this station, you will have more than humans to answer to. You will face my people. And we do not forget. We do not forgive." Another voice joined. "Galactic Council Emergency Response Team incoming. All parties are ordered to stand down pending council investigation. And another, this is the news ship Truth Seeker. We're recording everything. The galaxy is watching, Commander. What you do next will define how history remembers you. More voices, more ships responding to the broadcast. What had started as a desperate plea was becoming something larger, a moment where people across the galaxy chose to stand up. On the view screen, Minyu watched the ship. For long, tense minutes, it held position. Then, slowly, it began to turn away, retreating, not because they were defeated, but because the cost of continuing had become too high. Sagged against Minyu, and he realized the child had been holding their breath. "Is it over?" whispered. "Not over," Minyu said, "but we won this round." Around them, the people in the communications center began to cheer. Strangers hugged each other. Someone was crying, pulled both Minyu and into a fierce embrace, even looked relieved though he tried to hide it. But Minyu's eyes were on watching the approaching signatures of the fleet. Aura had called them. She had stood with them when it mattered most. That had to mean something. Tugged on his sleeve. "Minyu, what happens now?" "Now we find out if being brave was enough." He picked up the child, holding close. "But whatever happens, you were amazing. You know that." Smarkings glowed bright. "You taught me. You showed me that even when you're scared, you can still do the right thing. That's what being brave means." Minyu pressed his forehead to and closed his eyes. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. They'd stood against tyranny and won. They'd changed the game, and they'd shown the galaxy something important. That sometimes the smallest lives matter most, and that protecting them is worth any risk. The fleet arrived exactly when Aura promised. 3 warships, each one massive and gleaming in the starlight. The vessel that had threatened the station retreated quickly, disappearing into the dark between stars. Minyu watched them go and felt something in his chest unclench. They were safe. For now. The next week passed in a blur of meetings and testimonies. The Galactic Council launched a formal investigation into the attack on S's colony. Its broadcast had spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. News networks played it constantly. People on dozens of worlds saw a small child standing brave against impossible odds. They saw a human refusing to surrender someone who needed protection. Public opinion shifted like a tide. Pressure built on the council to act. Commander was recalled by his own government, facing charges. The attack on the colony was officially condemned as a war crime. It wasn't justice, not really. Nothing could bring back S's family, but it was something. It was the galaxy saying that what happened mattered. Through it all, Minyu waited. The custody hearing had been postponed during the crisis. Now it was scheduled again, but everything felt different. The small case of one human and one cub had become something larger, something the whole galaxy was watching. 3 days before the hearing, Aura came to visit. She looked tired, her usually perfect composure slightly frayed. She sat across from Minyu and in the ship's small galley and was quiet for a long time. "I have been thinking," she said finally, "about family, about what it means. In culture, we believe family is given to us by blood and tradition. We believe the bonds that matter most are the ones we are born into, but watching you too, I am no longer certain that is the only truth." Leaned forward, ears perked with interest. Minyu stayed silent, letting the ambassador speak. "I have reviewed the data. I have watched recordings of your interactions. I have seen how responds to you versus others of our kind." Aura's golden eyes fixed on Minyu. "The bond between you is complete, as strong as any pack bond I have witnessed, stronger than some. Breaking it would harm deeply, perhaps irreparably." Hope stirred in Minyu's chest, but he kept his voice level. "Does this mean?" "It means I will recommend to the council that you be granted legal guardianship." Aura raised a hand as started to cheer. "But there are conditions. Must receive cultural education from our embassy, regular visits, lessons in our language, our history, our ways. The child has a right to know where they come from, even if they choose to live with you. I can accept that, Minyu said quickly. I never wanted to cut off from culture. I just wanted to keep us together. Aura nodded. There is something else, something I would like to offer if you are willing. A ceremony. It is an old ritual rarely performed anymore. It formally recognizes a pack bond that was formed outside traditional means. It would make you, in the eyes of my people's true guardian, part of pack by choice rather than blood. What does it involve? Minyu asked. Nothing difficult. Spoken vows, a sharing of markings. It is symbolic, but in our culture, symbols matter. It would give your bond official recognition. It would make the council's decision easier to accept. Aura paused. And it would honor what you have done for this child. You saved a life, yes, but more than that, you gave a reason to keep living. That deserves recognition. Minyu looked at. The cub's eyes were wide, markings glowing bright with excitement. What do you think? He asked the child. Yes, said immediately. Yes, I want this. I want everyone to know you're my pack, my family, my Minyu. The possessiveness in that small voice made Minyu smile. Then yes, we'll do the ceremony. That took place 2 days later in a small ceremonial room the embassy had prepared. The walls were covered in flowing fabrics that reminded Minyu of starlight. Soft music played, something haunting and beautiful that made his chest ache with emotions he couldn't name. Aura officiated, wearing traditional robes marked with silver thread. Other attended, witnesses to something they had never seen before. A human being welcomed into a pack bond. Was there, and Sora and even Captain came, standing at the back with her arms crossed but her eyes soft. The ceremony was in first, the old language that sounded like wind through trees. Aura translated for Minyu's benefit. She spoke of bonds that transcend species, of family chosen rather than given, of the courage it takes to love something different from yourself. Then it was Minyu's turn to speak. He knelt so he was at eye level with and took the child's small hands in his own. I didn't plan for this, he said. I was just doing salvage work, just trying to get by, but then I found you and everything changed. You were so small and so scared and I couldn't leave you. I couldn't walk away. These past weeks watching you grow stronger, braver. You've changed me too. You've reminded me that the most important thing we can do is show up for the people who need us. So I make this promise to you, I will be your pack, your family, your home, for as long as you need me. For as long as I'm alive, you will never be alone again. Was crying, tears sliding down that small face, but they were good tears, happy tears. I promise too, said, voice shaking. I promise to be brave like you taught me, to be kind like you showed me, to remember that family isn't just blood, it's choice, it's showing up, it's you. Aura stepped forward with a small bowl containing a luminescent paste. She explained that it was made from plants that only grew on the. It would leave temporary markings on skin, symbols of pack and family. She painted marks on his forehead first, traditional symbols that spoke of belonging and protection. Then she turned to Minyu, and with gentle touches, painted the same symbols on his skin. The paste tingled and glowed softly. You are marked, Aura said formally. You are bound. You are pack. Let all who see know that this human and this cub are family, recognized by tradition and blessed by witness. What has been joined here should not be torn apart. The room was silent. Then the present began to sing, a low harmonious sound that resonated in Minyu's bones, joined in, voice high and pure. Minyu didn't know the words, but he hummed along, feeling the weight of the moment settle over him like a blanket. When the ceremony ended, people came forward to offer congratulations. Strangers touched the marks on Minyu's forehead with reverence. They called him pack leader and guardian and braveheart. Hugged him so hard his ribs creaked. Actually smiled, a rare sight. But the best moment came later, when it was just Minyu and back on the ship. They sat together in the cockpit, looking at the stars, the marks on their skins still glowing faintly in the dim light. Are you happy? Minyu asked. Thought about it seriously. I miss my first family, I always will, the hurt doesn't go away. I know. But I'm happy too, because I have you now, because you chose me when you didn't have to, because you made me feel like I matter. Looked up at him with those enormous eyes. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for keeping me. Thank you for being my pack. You pulled the child close. Thank you for letting me. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being brave enough to live. They sat like that for a long time, watching stars slide past the viewport. The official hearing came and went. The council ruled in their favor, granting Minyu full legal guardianship with the cultural education provisions Aura had suggested. There was paperwork, lots of it, forms to fill out and regulations to follow, but none of that really mattered. What mattered was that they were together. What mattered was that a small life had been saved and given a chance to grow. What mattered was that somewhere in the black between stars, a human and an alien cub had formed a bond that would last. Minyu went back to salvage work, but now came with him. The child learned quickly, small hands surprisingly good at delicate repairs, asked endless questions about navigation and engines and the 100,000 things that kept a ship running. Minyu taught everything he knew, patient with the curiosity that never seemed to end. Once a month they visited the embassy, learned songs and dances and the old stories. The child spoke fluently now, switching between languages without thinking. Other cubs came to these lessons, orphans like who had lost their families. They bonded over shared grief and growing hope, had friends, a community, roots in two cultures instead of one. 6 months after the ceremony, they were on a routine salvage run when asked a question. Why did you choose me? You could have left me in that pod. You could have followed the rules. Your life would have been simpler. Minyu thought about all the ways he could answer. The truth was complex, layered with emotion and instinct and 100 small choices that had led to this moment. But in the end, the answer was simple. Because that's what humans do, he said. We find the lost ones. We protect the vulnerable. We form bonds with anything and anyone who needs us. It's not always logical. It's not always smart. But it's who we are. And when I saw you, small and scared and alone, I knew I couldn't walk away. Because maybe the most human thing we can do is refuse to let someone face the dark alone. Markings glowed bright, that familiar purr starting up in the small chest. I'm glad you're human. I'm glad you found me. I'm glad I'm yours. I'm glad too, little light. I'm glad too. Far across the galaxy, other species watched and whispered. These humans who lived such brief lives but loved so fiercely, who broke rules and logic for the sake of compassion, who formed families from the most unlikely pieces. They were strange, these humans, unpredictable, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with weapons or warfare. Because if a human could love an alien cub enough to risk everything, what else might they be capable of? What other impossible things might they achieve? What other lost souls might they find and claim as their own? The galaxy didn't have answers to those questions, but it watched, wary and wondering, as one human and one cub flew through the stars together, a family formed in darkness and bound by choice. And in that small ship with its broken coffee maker and creaking hull, 2 lives intertwined continued forward, not because it was easy, not because it made sense, but because sometimes the most important thing in the universe is having someone who looks at you and says, without hesitation, without condition, "You have me." That was enough. That was everything. That was home.